Have you ever wondered what World War II looked like from the other side? Not the story of heroes and villains we all know, but the complex, often contradictory experience of the German people themselves. This isn't about rewriting history or justifying it's about understanding how a nation could be swept up in a tide of ideology, how ordinary people navigated extraordinary times, and what the war meant for those on the ground in Germany. Let's rewind to the 1920s. Germany is reeling from its defeat in World War I. The Treaty of Versailles has imposed crippling reparations, stripped away territory, and assigned sole blame for the war. The economy is in shambles, hyperinflation makes money worthless, and political instability is rampant. For many Germans, this period, known as the Weimar Republic, felt like a national humiliation. There's a deep sense of betrayal, the infamous stab-in-the-back myth, blaming politicians, not the army, for the defeat. This potent mix of economic hardship and wounded national pride created fertile ground for extremist movements. Into this chaos steps Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. They offer simple answers to complex problems. They promise to restore Germany's greatness, to tear up the hated treaty, to rebuild the economy, and to create a unified, powerful nation. To a populace desperate for hope and order, this message is incredibly seductive. Through masterful propaganda, rallies that are spectacles of power, and targeting scapegoats like Jewish people and communists for the nation's problems, the Nazis consolidate their support. By 1933, Hitler is appointed chancellor. What follows is a swift and brutal consolidation of power. Democracy is dismantled, political opponents are arrested, and society is reorganized along Nazi ideological lines. Life in the early years of the Third Reich is a paradox. For many so-called Aryan Germans, things seem to improve. Massive public works projects, like the Autobahn, create jobs. Rearmament stimulates the economy. There's a renewed sense of national purpose and pride. Organizations like the Hitler Youth and the League of German Girls indoctrinate the next generation, creating a sense of community and belonging built on Nazi ideology. But beneath this shiny surface, a dark reality is unfolding. Jewish citizens are systematically stripped of their rights, their businesses, and their dignity. Dissent is crushed. The secret police, the Gestapo, sow fear. It's a society built on conformity and terror. Then comes the march to war. Hitler, emboldened by a lack of international resistance, begins his expansionist policy. First, the Rhineland is then Austria is annexed in the Anschluss, celebrated by many Austrians. Next, the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia is handed over at the Munich Conference, in a desperate attempt by Britain and France to appease Hitler and avoid war. To many Germans, these are not acts of aggression, but the rightful reclaiming of German lands and peoples, undoing the injustices of Versailles. The propaganda machine portrays Hitler as a brilliant statesman, achieving victory after victory without firing a shot. The invasion of Poland in September 1939 changes everything. This is the official start of World War II in Europe. Initially, the German war machine seems unstoppable. Using the new Blitzkrieg or lightning war tactics, they overrun Poland, then Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, and France in rapid succession. These are dizzying victories. At home, there's a sense of euphoria. It seems Germany has avenged its earlier defeat and is now the master of Europe. Soldiers ride home with tales of triumph, and the future of the thousand-year Reich seems assured. But the tide begins to turn. The planned invasion of Britain, Operation Sea Lion, is thwarted by the Royal Air Force in the Battle of Britain. Then, in June 1941, Hitler makes his most fateful decision: the invasion of the Soviet Union, Operation Barbarossa. Initially, it follows the same pattern of stunning success. German armies plunge deep into Soviet territory, but Russia is vast, and the winter is brutal. The Blitzkrieg stalls outside Moscow. The German army, unprepared for the freezing temperatures and the sheer tenacity of the Red Army, gets bogged down in a war of attrition it cannot win. The Battle of Stalingrad becomes the symbolic turning point. A whole German army is encircled and annihilated. It's a catastrophic defeat that shatters the myth of German invincibility. For the first time, the public back home feels the true, devastating costs of the war. Letters from the front turn from triumphant to desperate. The propaganda can no longer hide the mounting losses. The war in the East becomes a brutal, grinding nightmare of unimaginable scale and cruelty for both sides. Meanwhile, on the home front, life grows increasingly grim. Allied bombing raids begin to hammer German cities. What started as targeted strikes on industrial sites evolves into area bombing, aimed at breaking civilian morale. Cities like Hamburg, Dresden, and Berlin are turned into firestorms and rubble. Life becomes a constant struggle for survival, huddling in air raid shelters, dealing with rationing, and living under the constant fear of the next siren. The initial enthusiasm for the war has evaporated, replaced by exhaustion, fear, and a desperate wish for it to end. By 1944, the situation is hopeless. On June 6, the Allies land in Normandy, opening the long-awaited Western Front. Germany is now caught in a two-front war, being squeezed from both east and west. The German army, bled dry by years of fighting, is now a shadow of its former self, filled with old men and young boys. Yet, the Nazi regime fights on with fanatical determination, demanding total sacrifice from the population. The propaganda shifts from promising victory to calling for a desperate last stand to defend the homeland from the Bolshevik hordes and the vengeful Allies. The final months of the war are an apocalypse. The Red Army advances from the east, the Allies from the west. German cities fall one by one. The nation collapses into chaos. Millions of German civilians flee the advancing armies, especially the Red Army in the east, fearing retribution. Finally, in late April 1945, the Soviets reach Berlin. In the ruble of his capital, with his 1,000-year Reich lasting only 12, Hitler commits suicide. On May 8, 1945, Germany unconditionally surrenders. The war is over. But for the German people, the ordeal is not. Their country is in ruins, occupied by foreign powers, and burdened with the horrific truth of the Holocaust and other atrocities committed in their name. This was stunned null, or 0 war at time, to confront not just physical destruction, but a complete moral and national collapse. Looking back from this point of devastation, the journey from the promise of national rebirth to the reality of total ruin is a stark and powerful lesson from history. Thank you for watching, and if you found this perspective valuable, please like and subscribe for more deep dives into history.